going on? This is Matt Wenning at winningstrength.com, and today I wanted to talk about Colton Engelbrecht, and I hope I'm saying his name correctly. This guy's a total phenom, and I want to go into his lifting, some of his accomplishments, and then some critiques that I have on the lifting that hopefully he sees this, and maybe it'll help him even break the records even farther, which I don't even know is humanly possible. But before we get to that, please like, subscribe, and share some comments that you think that technique-wise or training-wise may help Colton push past the human barriers of what we thought was even possible. Now, for those of you that are new to the channel, I'm Matt Wenning. I was a Westside Barbell member from 1999 to about 2008. I broke multiple all-time world records in equipped lifting and then switched to raw the last 5 or 6 years of my competing, breaking world records raw as well. So I'm one of the only lifters to have equipped world records and all-time raw world records with no knee wraps. But before we get into Colton, what I wanted to talk about was the predecessors beforehand where people thought things were just unachievable. One of which is a good friend of mine, Ed Cohen's. And Ed Cohen's totals were remarkably past any person in their particular time frame in his time. He was a 220, 242, sometimes 275 lifter that was just an absolute juggernaut, breaking all-time world records left and right. And Ed Cohen was a big draw for a lot of my generation to want to compete and want to train as hard as we trained. And as the years went by, I think Ed Cohen's numbers and still legendary status still holds in very high regard. I still consider him one of, if not the best lifter of all time. But we have a handful of lifters coming through in this new generation that are just unfathomable. If you would have told me that this Colton Engelbrecht guy would be able to total these things at 242 and 275, I would have told you it's crazy. The only thing that looks human to me is his bench press. So let's watch the video in its entirety so that way we can get a good understanding of what we're talking about before I break down the lifts and give you my personal experience on what I think may help these lifts increase more. Now, as we can see, these lifts are nearly inhuman. And with the strength level that's shown in some of these lifts, especially the deadlift and the squat, it's just unbelievable how much power and strength this guy has at such a young age. So there's a handful of things that I want to go over, and we'll break down each lift in order for him to hopefully go further than that and last a little bit longer. So let's dive into the squat first. First thing that I can see, which is a huge advantage, is bar position. He's got the bar below his traps and above his rear delts. We talk about this all the time with people that we bring in for assessments, athletes that we train, etc. There's nothing wrong with squatting high bar. I know that John Hack squats a little bit more high bar, but we can see here the true advantage of having that bar a little bit lower and shortening the torso lever arm. And that allows us to be able to do the lift with a little bit less back and thoracic pressure, and also allows us to keep the bar a little bit more behind us, maintaining more midfoot and heel pressure versus wanting to kick us up over on the toes. So what I like about what I'm going to talk about first and the positivity of it is the bar position is amazing. He doesn't look uncomfortable under the bar. His hand position looks really good, but there's a couple things that we need to fix as well. If we look, I am not a huge fan of squatting with my head down. Now, in some instances for squat competition, when you have various ceiling heights, sometimes it can be easier to find a spot on the floor to look at, and I understand that completely. But what I find is that he's one of the few people that can keep his chest up when his head is down. Now, do I think that his squat could improve with his head up? Absolutely. Now, how far up is individual, but in my opinion, at least putting it neutral will have it a little bit higher at the bottom, and that'll help a couple of things that we'll get to farther down the line on the video. So now that we've talked a little bit about what my opinion is on the head position, I want to look at the eccentric. Other than the head position, I don't see anything really wrong with how he's going down. Notice his knees don't fluctuate in or out. They stay pushed out. They stay in very good position. It looks like his shins stay in really good position. So really on the eccentric phase, I don't really have anything critique-wise to say because I think it looks pretty damn good, especially, again, with his head down. But if we look at his foot pressure, he is trying to rip the sides of his shoes completely off. And that's what we try to teach all the time. And you see a lot of lifters just not understand the foot pressure. I actually did a seminar in Toronto and we taught people this, and we're breaking PRs left and right within a half an hour. It seems that he's figured that out either genetically or just by default. I don't know who coaches him. But the point being is his foot pressure is immaculate. So not much to say on the eccentric other than I'd pick the head up. Now we've covered the head position in the eccentric phase. Now I want to talk about the rebound. And if we look at the rebound and maybe the first 2 to 3 inches, we can start to see some little deviations of the flexing forward versus keeping it in the hamstrings and glutes. This is very, very difficult, especially under these extreme loads. And this is why I feel knee wrap numbers are so much higher than all-time no knee wrap numbers, is because they force your knees to want to stay a little bit straighter, a little bit longer, and not come as far forward with some people's technique. So what you find is that at the very bottom, when he reverses, you can see the pressure change happening. So he's done a very good job on the eccentric phase. On the concentric, we start to see small little problems that if he fixes it, could be another 30, 50 pounds sitting in the tank on the squat. So what I find is that this is the crucial point, because once you get about 1.5 inches to 2 inches above parallel, whatever position you're in is the position that you're going to need in order to finish out the lift. Now what we need to do is take a look at the bench press. This is where I feel we could get the most work. Obviously, it's the weakest of the 3 lifts for almost everyone. But at his strength level for the deadlift and the squat, I feel that his bench press should be in the 6s. So there's some key tips that we probably need to go over, and hopefully he hears this and will help him tremendously. But I see a couple little small things that we could make better on the bench press that would help him, I think, break over that 600 mark, or even if you're watching this trying to break a mark over 300 or 250 or 365, I'd coach it the exact same way. So let's watch the video first, and then we'll dive into the technical matters that I think maybe could be polished a little bit better. Okay, this is just a matter of opinion, but since I've benched 611 in a full contest, I feel that I'm still a little bit ahead of him on the bench press, although he did it at a lighter body weight, which is ultra impressive. There's a couple of little tips that I would say. One, I think his hands are out just a tick too wide for his shoulder width. If we look at some studies, we can see that this is going to cause pec and shoulder issues down the road. Although it's going to shorten his range of motion, I think that stacking his joints for this position would be a little bit better and give him a little bit more drive. So what we notice is that hand width, when he takes it out, his elbows almost in the middle of the lift don't really know what to do. They kind of flutter. And that tells me that his lats and his mid-back aren't staying tight when he bench presses. This can cause the lift or the barbell to not want to touch in certain spots on the chest, throwing off timing, and then also causing issues with wrist bending, etc. He doesn't seem to have a lot of wrist issues, which is ultra impressive, but that little bitty back wobble that he has right in the middle, I think if it's corrected, should send his bench well over into the 600s. The other thing that I think he's going to have to focus on is tricep strength. He tends to have a fairly long bench press stroke for a decent bench presser. But what he'll find is that if he can keep it in his lats and his triceps, he'll be able to last a lot longer, therefore be able to withstand more volume, therefore be able to bench press more over time. The trick with the bench press, in all reality, and Maddox and a lot of other guys will be able to attest to this, is you got to be able to last long enough to be able to hit your biggest bench numbers. Maddox, I believe, is in his mid-30s, and still chasing that 800-pound number. But the point is that for as young as he is, I think his bench press holds the most potential. We just might need some technical fixes with the lats getting stronger, the hand position becoming a little bit narrower, and the triceps becoming the dominant pressor in the muscle groups themselves in order to save his shoulders and let him last another 5 or 10 years to really see the true potential in his bench press. The last lift I want to go over, and this will be a short part of the video, is I have nothing to say on the deadlift. The deadlift positioning, his double overhand position, which I find is amazing if you have the hand structure to do so, allows the body to have more of a symmetrical pressure on the spine. When you do an over-under hand grip, you tend to have a little bit of one side kind of off kilter to the other side, which can cause spinal issues. His body is perfectly built to deadlift with the new technology and the new deadlift bars, with the amount of deadlift whip that's in the bars. I think that's a huge help. That's one of the reasons I think it's so impressive that Ed Cohen pulled 901 with a stiff bar. It'd be really interesting to see if people had to go back to the stiff bar, what the deadlifts would be capable of now. I think that before Andy Bolton and Benedict Magnuson pulled 1,000, I don't even think anybody thought it was possible to pull 1,000 pounds with no straps in a traditional compound movement. If we look at the deadlift, and again, going into a little bit of history, Andy Bolton pulled over 900 pounds nearly 50 times in competition. I mean, that's just a record that's just totally unbelievable. Colton has the potential to pull 1,000 pounds for a lot of years if he can maintain his health. So what we have to do is, once somebody gets that strong in the deadlift, we have to peak the deadlift very, very protectively, meaning that what I don't want to see him doing is now, because he's got such a huge backing behind him and everybody wants to see him do crazy stuff, is fall into the same problem that Larry Wheels fell into, which is when you start lifting for views. And then what happens is that you don't think about competitions, and then all of a sudden you're nicked up and banged up, and the genetic gifts and the work ethic that you have to train sometimes gets diminished because now you start getting little nicks and bruises. He's young enough to where hopefully the injuries don't accumulate. But Larry Wheels retired at around 27, 28, and so did a lot of other great lifters that have potential to be way stronger in their 30s. They just trained too uneducational, I guess is the best way to put it. So I think if he gets his grip a little bit stronger, he might be the first person to pull 500 kg in a powerlifting meet, which would be totally insane. But I think the biggest thing that we all have to keep in mind is let's keep him healthy. And I think social media has driven a lot of people out of maintaining health. And that's one advantage that Ed Cohen had, was you really only saw him do crazy shit in competitions. Now, I'm not saying he didn't train super hard, but he had massive off seasons where he trained a little bit more like a bodybuilder, took a little bit of time off from the wear and tear, and had a very long career. So what I hope to do is Colton sees this, hopefully other people see it too, and we try to get him to think more long-term versus just being a flash in the frying pan, because it's amazing to watch his lifting. So this is Matt Wenning at wenningstrength.com. These are the type of assessments that we can do virtually. If you send me videos of your training, I can break down these lifts and talk to you about what to fix and how to fix it. And I think that's a huge advantage for a lot of you guys on here. On online coaching, you get that off the rip regardless. And Patreon, we also have the workouts written to, I feel, give you the biggest bang for your buck with the least amount of mileage. And Train Heroic is the same way if you're tactical or you want a cheaper way to train conjugate with real coaches actually putting together real workouts. So this is Matt Wenning at wenningstrength.com. Talk to you guys soon and hope to see you on the website.